All right, baseball fans, welcome back to another elimination video. This is the end of the year stats video. It's going to be a World Series wrap, and it's also going to be stats of the league. And we're going to take a little bit of a deeper dive than we normally would. General standings. Look at this first. You see Baltimore was the #1 seed, but then they stumbled. Still a great year, 29-18, playing .617 ball. You see that there was a change of the guard in this division where the Ohio players played 52 baseball games. A lot of that was right around the 500 mark, though. Here's your world champ White Sox. The torrid run they had, and we'll kind of go through their schedule too. As now the rest of this division has to play catch up next year. And your Oakland A's, boy, they barely hung on to win the West. And there's the Dodgers, who made it's really weird when you look now at the National League winning percentages. A lot of beating each other up, and we touted how, the best 8 teams in the sport, we thought maybe 6 of the 8 teams might be National League teams, but when you look at the winning percentages, the Reds are the 628 club. And the Mets, Braves, and Phillies, almost a dead heat. Phillies had the second best record in the league, and they faded hard. Mets were charging. They fought valiantly to the ends of their season. Here's your big stumbling spot there. By the Reds not making it to the League Championship Series, that opened the window for everyone. It really would have been interesting to see the Reds and the White Sox in a World Series. It's a shame that didn't happen. That would have been a rather fascinating World Series. Reds probably still would have been the favorite, but you just saw what the White Sox did. They destroyed the Dodgers. So let's just get into the World Series stats. First thing, let's go with the White Sox. So this is just the World Series stats. So only 225 because most of these games were pitchers' duels. Okay. And when the White Sox were getting runs, they were getting them with guys walking and scoring and so forth. So the on-base percentage is 80 points better than the average, which is really good. If you're hitting just 225, you like the 310 on base. You see 16 walks with 20 strikeouts. 6 home runs in the 4 games. Okay. And they would score 20 runs in 4 games. That's 5 runs per game. Very efficient team. Allen, of course, 3 home runs, and Dick Allen has to be the MVP. There were some great pitching performances in a collective, but you have to give it to Dick Allen. He is the straw that stirs the drink here in Comiskey. 3 homers, 8 RBIs in the 4 games, hit 400. Ken Henderson, look at this number 2 hitter. This guy, yeah, free agent. Bucky Dent's hitting 357, batting 9th. Okay. And look at, you got 4 guys on the roster who didn't get a hit. 0 for 26. Beckert, Coluccio, Downing, Muser. Good news is those guys only play versus lefties. At least 3 of them do. Most peculiar is that the lefty was Tommy John, and they beat the tar out of him, which meant that the guys up here did all that. The pitching in this, right in the middle here, Forster and Garman pitched 2/3 of an inning without any consequence. But here's the starts. 4 of them and the 4 wins. Cott getting games 1 and 4 victories. Going back in my memory bank a little bit, the last time I can recall a 4-game sweep in a World Series, Baltimore versus Cincinnati. Baltimore used Cuellar, McNally, and Palmer, and Cuellar had 2 wins. So it was 3 starts by lefties, 1 start by a righty. That's the same math here. 3 starts by lefty, 1 by a righty, and Cott taking the Cuellar role in that particular instance. Cott could have been your series MVP, but it's a share the wealth kind of moment. You see, Gossage did give up runs in 2 of his 3 save opportunities. It's rather weird how his overall stats for the year are very good, but they're not as good as they were a year ago. Bonson's failure was in a big window where he could have failed and was left in there, and that's a shame. And Jerry Bell didn't play in the series. A 3.25 ERA, a 1.17 WHIP for the pitching staff. 10 walks, 23 strikeouts. Only one unearned run allowed, so that means the defense played pretty well. Now the Dodger stats. So they hit about the same 235, but they didn't get the run production. They only scored 14 runs because they didn't get enough homers. They had half as many. They just had 3. Jim Wynn had 8 RBI, and they came at good times, bottom of the 9th and bottom of the 7th inning in comeback attempts. 357. He's your Dodger hero of the of the World Series, at least. And this is a kind of a testament to how they drafted. These guys were strictly bench players. And we talked about the idea of, oh, yeah, maybe they'll go, if they need a left-handed bat, these are the guys they found in the draft. But ultimately it hurt the team because these are the guys you were thinking you'd be bringing in against Gossage late in a World Series game. And you could see there's, you don't want to bring these guys in. And frankly, they went over 15 anyway. Willie Davis did not have he had a big error in Game 3 that really hurt the Dodgers. And again, Wynn had 2 home runs, Say had 1, Garvey hit 294, matching his regular season, but no home runs. This is the lesson of 74, you could say, that you have to have more home runs for the Dodgers. Speed is great, but you need to hit the ball over the wall. Their starters are here, and here. Messersmith got 1 start with a 2.25 ERA. It was good, not good enough. Sutton had the 2 starts, but 15 hits allowed, 10 runs allowed. So the guys got on and scored. And that was just, it's on him. He can wear the goat horns, I guess. Tommy John, here's that start. It was just awful. The seldom used guys, believe it or not, did what they needed to do. Stan Wall, Jim Brewer, Charlie Huff, the least used pitchers during the year, did okay. Now at the bottom, this is rather... First, Joe Decker, of course, just like Jerry Bell, would not play. But here is one of the biggest stories of the entire World Series. That you have the 1974 Cy Young winner with 200 innings pitched did not play. And the reason he didn't play is Dodgers weren't even close to needing him. I mean, the White Sox were front runner the whole time. They started the engine and zoomed out of the gate all 4 games, held on and won them all. And so Mike Marshall just isn't really needed. I mean, there was no opportunity for him to play, so he didn't. It was a waste of his time. So he sort of watched the series unfold in the bullpen and realized there was not going to be a lead to protect. They were going to get a lead. They had a 1-0 lead in Game 4. That was about it in the 2nd inning. 0-4. You see, they gave up 4 unearned runs in the 20 they allowed. And they had 3 complete games. 2 of the 3 were good. The 1 complete game for Sutton was just because he's Sutton and no need to take him out, as the damage was done early, and he just, his last 4 innings of his 2nd complete game was scoreless. A 4.24 ERA. That's a run, of course, worse than the Chi Sox. 5.4, 4.3 results if you average it all out. But the White Sox had all the answers in the World Series, and those are the stats there. We can take a look at the road to getting there for the White Sox again. So they started the year losing 3 out of 4 to Baltimore. They would play them again in the League Championship Series, beat them 4-1. They won an interleague series against Las Vegas, 2 straight. Interesting. Las Vegas, they were the only team to beat the Cincinnati Reds in a series. A losing Las Vegas team. They beat the Reds 3-2. That was the only series the Reds lost until the Reds lost the league divisional round versus the Braves. A little footnote there. White Sox would lose 3 out of 4 to the Tigers, a team that ultimately got eliminated by their division rival, Ohio. White Sox began to take care of their own division after that. They beat the Brewers 4-3. They lost 4-3 to the Twins. Home field advantage helped the Twins secure that one, and they beat Kansas City 4-1. Then they went on the 20-5 bender in the postseason tournament, where it wasn't even close, and it kind of fell under the radar a little bit. I mean, they beat the Twins the rematch 5-2. Not just beating the Twins, but also having a tiebreaker over the Twins. That took them from a game over 500 to 4 over 500. Then they beat Oakland 3-2 right here. Now that put them at 23-18, and this is one of the key moments of our season. They're sitting at 23-18, and they're watching TV to figure out what happens next. Well, what happens next was Detroit fell out of a bye. They were going to be a number 2. They fell out of a bye by being swept by Baltimore and then ultimately knocked out by the Ohio players. Of course, Oakland, White Sox beat them. So the White Sox kind of defaulted into a 2 seed. And so they just stayed there and waited for things to shake out. And when the things shook out, their opponent, after not having to play in the wild card round, was this Ohio players team who got red hot. They beat Detroit 3-0. Ohio actually had a better record than the White Sox. They were 8 over 500, but they were inexperienced, overmatched with a weak roster, and the White Sox dusted them 4 straight. And this is where the White Sox really started to, not just win, but dominate. In the divisional round, Baltimore had no idea what happened to them. They were +5 in the standings, 14 over compared to 9 over. They got wasted 4-1. And of course, the 4-game sweep in the World Series, taking a 12 over 500 White Sox team to 16 over 500. One of the best finishes of a world champ, 35-19. I might have some finishes here. 2024 postseason Oakland was 35-13. That's a little bit better. The 2023 postseason, the Reds 35-15. A little bit better. 2022 postseason. Oh, I have it. I don't have Pittsburgh in here. Pittsburgh's is missing. I don't have their result with me. I do have overall stats of all the players. I can get to that in a bit. Let's refocus to our 2 combatants now. In team stats, we're going to just focus on them. Let's start with the Dodgers this time. We'll have an elimination videos for the Dodgers and the Dodgers and the White Sox as well. But 31-26 finish for the team, and you see Sutton finished 9-9. It's really weird. They showed more prosperity this year, though Sutton pitched worse than he normally does. Normally, Don Sutton's pitching out of his mind and he's not getting any run support. Now he's getting run support and they're not pitching that well. 3.63. Team ERA, it's okay, but you expect more. Messersmith caught up to Sutton with a better year. 9-5, 1.77 ERA, and a 1.02 whip. Mike Marshall got 12 saves in 39 innings with a 3.46 ERA. When you pitch that many innings, chances are one of your outings isn't going to be that great, and it'll inflate the ERA a little bit. The offense, Buckner and Garvey had 72 hits, but only 9 home runs combined and 40 RBIs combined. Like had Buckner at 13 stolen bases. That was pretty cool in the 304 performance. Jim Wynn, for all the heroics in the World Series and for all the production in the homer and RBI columns, still finished just 213. What works, though, is that if you walk a lot, it salvages your own base. You get a 324 on base, which is 110 points higher than his batting average. There was a lot of homer walk strikeout scenarios there for Jim Wynn. In the middle of all this, Ron Say was productive at third base with 8 home runs, tying him for the team lead. Second in RBI on the team. Now let's take a look at the year-end stats for the White Sox. White Sox ended the year with a 3.31 ERA and a 2.68 average. Would you have guessed that overall, in comparison, the pitching staff was probably more of the leading force than the offense? A 3.31 ERA is outstanding. In the column of saves, Gossage has 16 in 42 innings. Though his ERA is 3.40. 20 walks, 34 strikeouts. So those numbers pale a little bit. We'll see that in their elimination video 2 years ago. Wilbur Wood, 12 and 7. That's still nice. 360 and a 130 whip. Cott, 10 and 3. Won 2 World Series games, but his ERA is 4.06. Unsung hero Mike Garman gives you 24 unearned runless innings. So that happened. A deadlock, you bring him in, and you're not going to have to worry about anything. Terry Forster, 20 innings, solid. 2 losses, however, that often get remembered. Otherwise, he was more effective than Gossage. But we somehow remember the 2 losses. And here's your superstar, Bart Johnson, pitching out of his mind. 10-win card of 1974 and 140-some innings. He goes 6-1 in 92 and 2/3 innings, the 2.72 ERA. That's almost the exact same stats that are on the card. But he's just given the leash, and he just goes out there like he's a top 1, 2, 3 starter in the league. They don't try and restrict his innings or protect the kid from, being in the game too long. Does a great job. The offense, Dick Allen, he's right in the middle of it here. Leading the club in homer and RBI, but a 2.79 average. That's, it's going to be 40 points lower than his batting average, but results are what the results are. He leads the team, but statistically, he's going to get a lot of help from a lot of contributors here. George Orta, 352. They put him in the leadoff spot, and that's where he was most effective. Didn't need him to steal bases. Scored 29 runs, just behind Ken Henderson and Dick Allen. Ken Henderson also hit 400 in the World Series. That brought his average up to 301. 28 RBIs, 5 stolen bases. Let's not ignore that Dick Allen also had 15 doubles with his 14 home runs. So he is getting the extra base hits. Bucky Dent at the bottom of the lineup hitting 292. That's overachievement. Bob Stinson, overachievement there. The only hitter you can, if you want to complain about somebody, you can complain about Bill Melton. Just kind of average defense at third base. And, he had 28 RBIs, though. So once you get past Dick Allen, you've got Bradford at 30, and then Melton at 28, Henderson at 28. This is why I say this is a 268 hitting team with 39 home runs, but it's in 54 games. So overall, it was really the pitching that did a little more lifting than the offense. It's close. If you were going to pitch a unit between hitting and pitching, that was more responsible for hoisting the trophy, but I'm going to go with the pitching staff. Wilbur Wood's ability to pitch on 2 days rest, getting Bart Johnson he can only pitch on 4 days rest, so they had to keep managing the days off as effectively as they can. It worked out perfectly in the League Championship Series. It could have been troublesome in the World Series. Had the Dodgers won one of those games, Game 5 would have been Jerry Bell for the White Sox versus Joe Decker. Now what we can look at, let's look at overall stats of all the players. You have to ignore the highlights and the rookie and all this notation because that was done earlier in the year. But the 400 hitters obviously cooled off. But the 3 Yankee hitters are still, I guess because their season ended, they did an opportunity for their averages to drop. And you're wondering, talk about Ohio making the playoffs. Well, they had 3 guys there too. Bobby Mercer, swan song finish maybe there. Isn't Belanger in here somewhere? Mark Belanger and his ridiculous year for Baltimore. Yeah, there it is. There's Baltimore's leading hitter. Unreal. Homers in the American League, 10 home runs there. We know Dick Allen had 14. He probably, there it is. So Dick Allen's down the list a bit, but he's got the 14. In the National League, you know, it really was a better league-wide statistics. You have, you know, McBride and Parker both hitting 400. You know, Brock got him in there. Somehow got in there twice. I don't know how that happened. Double check that. But Aaron had he cooled down a little bit with just 13 home runs, and Kingman had 12. So let's take a look actually at the, I want to look at the year-to-date totals here. We have the year-to-date totals for the entire league. This is one of the more significant parts of building the league year to year. So it's funny, the league's interleague was dead even until they would meet again in the World Series, when the White Sox added the +4 to the docket. So they get 322, 318. The American League had better pitching or weaker offense, depending on how you look at it, with a 3.75 ERA. National League was 4.08. But I want to go down to the most critical. This is where we compare our years and go to a year-to-year comparison, going back a deep dive. So these are the number of games played going back to 2018. And we're looking to get a high number in the mid 600s and increase it if we can. The more games played indicates the more competitive the league is. So there was a slight dip there, and then boom, you had these great years in 21 and 22 playing all these games. And then in 23 and 24, that number came down to 631 and 643. So earlier this year, I made a prediction for 2025 by looking at the trends, 631 and 643. And my prediction was 648 games played. And my predictions for batting average and earned run average, by looking at these numbers, was a slight increase in average and ERA. And the reason was because the 1972 season would be removed, and 72 was a down year for offense, so we're going to lose down year stats, making positive year stats in 73 with a DH, increasing the totals. So I guessed increasing a 385 ERA to 395 and increasing batting average from 260 to 265. These are my guesses, and adding 5 more games. Turns out we had a lot fewer games again. We had dipped back down to the five years ago, down in this realm, 632. That shows that a lot of really good teams were beating up some poor teams, meaning that the poor teams in the league need to do a better job of getting a more solid roster. I can take a dive at this, as I recall, in the schedule where this would have happened, and it happened around May, and there is this stretch of series here. These are 7-game series. Milwaukee at Kansas City, the Expos at Cleveland, Colorado at Arizona, Pittsburgh at the Cubs, and Phillies at the Braves. All 5 of those were sweeps. So that was just one really bad stretch of baseball where the losing teams just gave up, folded, or couldn't figure out what to do. It's early enough in the season that maybe they didn't know who should be starting or where they should be in the lineup. Should we be stealing bases? Should we tag up? Who do we go to in the bullpen? The bad teams hadn't figured their stuff out. And it's, if you play this game, it's a lot easier to lose than it is to win. It's pretty easy to lose in the sport, but it's very hard to win in the sport. So that would explain why you've got a 20-0 run, a 25-0. That's 5 times 4 sweeps. 25-0 run by the dominant teams in that little stretch. And so that contributed to at least maybe a 10-game deficit in overall games played. But going over to the average column here, this was my guess of the increase, and I was pretty close. We had 266, I guess 265. And the pitching was actually 392. It's almost hard to guess an ERA because you have to factor in unearned runs, plays such a key point in this number being skewed. But, I mean, if you look at the whips of pitching staffs collectively, you see how it's almost a constant here. 141, 1399, 140, 139, 140, 142. On base percentage, look at that. 328, 25, 26, 24, 26, 30 over a 5-year span. So that's kind of good to know. Understand what constants you develop in a carryover league. Constants are good as they means that your strategies for roster construction are working in certain areas very well. Ultimately, number of games played, I would say those 5 teams would be teams I probably need to work on a little bit better in the off season. And again, I'll look at those teams as I identify this. Kansas City, absolutely. Kansas City was terrible this year, and I've really got to make sure that doesn't happen again by just making sure they draft better. Kind of fell under the radar. You just assume Kansas City's going to be good because of George Brett and because the Royals made the playoffs in the middle and later part of the decade. Cleveland should have been better than the Ohio players. They have certainly a better pipeline of players they can get to, right? Two of the teams redeemed themselves later on, oddly enough, by playing short series as well. Atlanta, sure, they got swept 4 straight, but then they started beating teams up by a short number of games. So that shows the brevity of their season. And how about Arizona? They started 0-10, but their season became brief when they beat the Dodgers 5-1 and managed to get to the playoffs, only to lose in the wild card round. Cubs are sort of the equivalent of the Kansas City Royals. Have to put a team better for the Cubs than the one they had. Cubs, Indians, Royals, 3 areas where they just got to do a better job of putting a team together. Well, I think we can do that for the end of this year, I guess, at this point. So coming up, we'll have the elimination videos for the LA Dodgers, an elimination video for the Chicago White Sox. We'll have the reconciliation of the 1973 card sets, actually looking at the cards going back into the box. And then we'll have a preview of the Fall League draft, and an interesting change made to the Fall League and the future of the Fall League. And that'll all be coming up in the next week with a schedule of the fall and winter months of what we're going to produce here in the off season. But that's it. The 2025 season stats are complete. And again, we got to give a shout out, of course, to the Chicago White Sox for winning the whole thing. That's it, folks. I appreciate you guys watching and commenting. We'll see you next time.